In January 2025, residents of a rural area in Minas Gerais made a discovery that should never have happened. At the edge of an old trail, used for decades by farmers and muleteers, something interrupted the path. It was not an animal, it was not a fallen tree, and it was definitely not an ordinary body. The skin was dried out, hard like old leather, cracked, with no smell of decomposition, as if that body had been rejected by the earth itself. No vultures circled overhead, no dogs approached. Insects avoided the area as if there was something far too wrong to be touched. Then they noticed the most disturbing detail. The corpse was standing upright, motionless, vertical, supported only by its own feet. Actually, at that moment, no one called the police right away. Some residents already knew that when the earth refuses a dead body, there is a reason. That is how a question passed down through generations emerges. Have you ever heard of the corpo secco? A Brazilian legend that claims that neither God, nor the devil, nor the soil accepts certain dead, and that perhaps it is not just ancient folklore, but something that still happens. The story of the corpo secco is not born from gratuitous fear, but from punishment. Before becoming a monster, it was an example. According to classic records of Brazilian folklore, such as those compiled by Luís da Câmara, this entity arises from the fusion of Christian morality brought by Portuguese colonizers and much older indigenous beliefs linked to the land, the spirit, and collective balance. Long before the arrival of Europeans, Tupi-Guarani peoples already believed that not all dead followed the same spiritual path. Living in disharmony with the community and with nature broke an invisible pact, and when that pact was broken, the spirit found no passage. These individuals did not reach the world of the ancestors, did not become protectors, and were not remembered with honor. They remained trapped, suspended between what lives and what has died. With colonization, this worldview blended with the Christian concept of mortal sin, especially those committed against one's own parents, against family, and against social order. Thus was born the idea of the corpo secco as the ultimate punishment, destined for those who beat or abandoned their parents, committed serious crimes without remorse, broke sacred oaths, or lived in complete rupture with the community. When these people died, something did not work as it should. The earth refused to receive them. There are reports of coffins that cracked open on their own, graves that collapsed and days later rose again, bodies that did not rot even after weeks. The spirit remained trapped within hardened, dry, inflexible flesh. It was not an ordinary undead nor a ghost. It was something worse, someone rejected by the entire world. The corpo secco does not resemble exaggerated monsters from modern stories. It has no enormous fangs and does not chase its victims. And perhaps that is exactly what makes it so disturbing. According to descriptions repeated over centuries, it maintains an extremely thin human form, with skin clinging directly to the bones like old leather dried in the sun. There is no fat, no flexibility. The arms hang stiffly along the body, and the hands, when visible, appear deformed, with fingers that are too long and too motionless. The most recurring detail in the accounts is the gaze. The eyes remain open always even after death. Even after days or weeks, they do not blink, they do not look away. Those who claim to have seen one almost always describe the same sensation, the impression of being watched by something that still knows who you are. Unlike other entities of Brazilian folklore, the corpo secco does not actively attack. It does not pursue, does not make sounds, and does not move in haste. It waits. It appears on old trails, many of them abandoned, near forgotten rural cemeteries. It avoids cities, artificial lighting, and busy areas, being seen almost always at dawn or at dusk. When someone gets too close, the air seems heavy, the temperature drops slightly, and the human body reacts before the mind can understand. Tremors, nausea, and a sudden feeling that something is deeply wrong, beyond explanation. It is said that the touch of the corpo secco does not kill immediately, but leaves invisible marks. People who report close contacts speak of sudden fevers with no medical cause, recurring nightmares of motionless figures, persistent sleep paralysis, and a constant sensation of being watched, symptoms that in many cases last for months and, according to some, never go away. In March 2025, a farmer from western São Paulo gave a statement to a local radio station reporting that while walking near a sugarcane field in the late afternoon, he noticed something strange standing between the rows of plants. From a distance, it looked like an old scarecrow, but something was wrong. because scarecrows move with the wind, and that figure did not. As he approached, the farmer noticed that the thing was breathing not visibly, but with the chest rising and falling slightly. He described the skin as far too dry for a living person and slowly backed away. That same night, he was struck by intense fevers, delirium, and repeated dreams of a figure standing upright, staring at him. Medical exams showed no known infection. The case never gained national attention, but it circulated among residents of the region who already knew that description. In Minas Gerais, two urban explorers decided to investigate an abandoned trail near an old rural cemetery from the 19th century to record content for social media. The video shows flashlights illuminating dense vegetation, the sound of footsteps, and accelerated breathing, until one of them stops and the camera points forward. A confused voice says there is someone standing there, but not walking. Silence sets in, and the recording ends abruptly. The full video was never officially released, but the audio circulated in forums and closed groups. Neither of the two young men ever posted content again after that day. In Rural, Paraná, a resident claimed to have buried his own father 3 times. According to him, after each burial, heavy rains caused the soil to give way and the coffin to rise. The 3rd time, the body was found rigid, dry, and without normal signs of decomposition. The man reported that his father was known for mistreatment and extreme violence within the family. Months later, the family abandoned the property, which remains empty to this day. These reports cross generations, change names, locations, and dates, but the description remains the same, as if the Corpo Seco had never left. Throughout Brazilian history, reports of the Corpo Seco have never disappeared. They have only changed form, where there were once stories passed down orally. Today there are audios, videos, and fragmented digital records, and the most disturbing thing is that the patterns remain the same. In a small rural community in Minas Gerais, there is a dirt road that residents avoid after sunset. In February 2025, a rideshare driver accepted an unusual request to an old farm off the common route. During the ride, the passenger remained in absolute silence. As they approached the indicated location, the driver noticed a human figure standing in the middle of the road, extremely thin, motionless, with arms pressed against the torso. For a few seconds, he had the sensation that the thing was blocking the path. When he quickly glanced at the back seat, the passenger was no longer there. The next morning, the car presented inexplicable electrical failures, and the man began having recurring nightmares of roads that led nowhere. He never accepted rides in that region again. In the interior of Bahia, an old well on an abandoned property dried up completely decades ago, after the violent death of a man known for abusing his own parents. In April 2025, a group of young people explored the area and recorded the interior of the ruined house and the absolute silence. As they approached the well, one of them commented that he felt the smell of old earth. The camera shook, and for a few seconds, an extremely thin silhouette appeared in the background of the image, standing near the edge of the well. When the group ran, the silhouette remained motionless, merely observing. Days later, one of the young men reported continuous sleep paralysis, and another left the city. The video was removed shortly afterward. In a small rural cemetery in Paraná, a night watchman resigned after only 2 weeks on the job. He stated that every night he saw the same figure standing among old graves, always in the same place and always motionless. When he tried to approach, he felt a sudden weakness, as if his body no longer responded. On one of the nights, when he pointed his flashlight directly at the figure, he realized that the eyes were open, fixed on him. Residents claim that the grave belongs to a man known for extreme domestic violence in the early 20th century. When analyzing these accounts, independent researchers notice patterns that are difficult to ignore. The Corpo Seco appears in places linked to violent or morally condemned deaths, always appears alone, never chases, never speaks, and never attacks directly. It is simply there like a reminder or a permanent sentence. Some anthropologists suggest that the Corpo Seco represents the materialization of extreme social judgment, while others believe it to be merely a collective psychological mechanism. The problem is that in 2025, something changed. For the first time, the Corpo Seco may have been recorded by modern technology. In July 2025, an independent environmental mapping team was using drones to document areas of illegal deforestation in the interior of Rondônia. While reviewing the footage, one of the operators noticed a vertical, motionless shape among the trees near a narrow clearing. The silhouette had human proportions, but was far too thin and far too rigid. The drone automatically approached and as the camera descended, the signal showed small interferences. The figure seemed to look upward, and at the moment the drone reached a certain altitude, the silhouette disappeared without running or hiding. Specialists analyzed the video and raised technical hypotheses such as shadows, pareidolia, or compression failures, but one detail remained unsettling. The silhouette maintained coherent human proportions across multiple frames, and thermal sensors registered no heat, neither animal nor human. When the video was shown to local residents, there was no surprise, only recognition. One of them said that it appears when someone dies badly, and another stated that the old road had been avoided for decades because a man known for extreme family violence had lived there whose body never stayed still. Science proves nothing definitive, but folklore has never needed technical proof. It remains alive because it explains what reason cannot fully close. The Corpo Secco challenges not only death, but the idea that every ending is definitive. Perhaps it is not a physical being. Perhaps it is a symbol, or perhaps it is something that simply should not be seen. After the video leak, similar reports began to emerge in other regions of Brazil, all describing the same thing. A human figure, extremely thin, motionless, as if waiting. The Corpo Secco does not scream, does not run, and does not hunt. It simply remains sand. Perhaps that is exactly what makes it so disturbing. Unlike other creatures of Brazilian folklore, it is not born from chaos or wild nature, but from human conduct. According to tradition, no one becomes a Corpo Secco by chance. It is the extreme result of a life marked by violence, contempt, and the breaking of fundamental bonds that sustain the community. For many indigenous and rural cultures, living well has always been a collective responsibility, and breaking that responsibility meant rupturing an invisible pact with the land. When that pact is broken, the earth refuses to welcome. For many anthropologists, the Corpo Secco represents definitive social judgment without absolution, redemption, or forgetting. The body remains dry because it cannot return to the natural cycle. It does not nourish the soil and does not become memory remaining there as a silent warning. In an increasingly technological world, stories like this continue to emerge because perhaps they were never about the past, but about the present. There are still people who live breaking bonds, causing pain without remorse, and leaving deep marks on the communities they pass through. And perhaps the Corpo Secco is the way culture found to say something simple, yet impossible to ignore. Not every death brings rest. If it exists only as folklore, it has already fulfilled its function. But if it exists on some other level, perhaps it is not there to frighten, but to remind us that the land watches, the community watches, and that some choices echo beyond life. And if you have ever heard a similar story in your Tanabal bodies that do not decompose or places no one dares to visit anymore, your story may not be alone. And perhaps there is still something waiting to be told. In the next episode, we will talk about an even older entity, a creature that protects the forest by punishing those who cross limits that should never be broken. The Mapa